Hello, this is Anna Amelia from North East Animal Rights, coming to you from Tyneside. But very soon we're heading up to Newcastle at Grays Monument to do our outreach up there. We did one last week and it was absolutely great. It was just lovely to be able to get out and talk to people again. You know, after lockdown, it's been such a long time since we've been able to do this. So we're there at Grays Monument from 11 o'clock till 1 o'clock. So come along and see us. Today we're talking about the Grand National because it's Grand National Week and weekend. A couple of weeks ago it was Cheltenham Gold Cup, but we know that horse racing goes on all the year round. Lockdowns hit the industry pretty hard. You know, they haven't been able to make the money they would expect to from the betting industry, which creates massive financial prizes and incentives. We've all been shaking our heads as animal rights activists as the tenuous definitions of sport to allow these animal killing activities to take place. It's a bit like fox hunting, you know, where they have this guise of trail hunting, but animals are still getting killed. They're desperate to get to a point where they can come out again and you know, and continue with their activities. In this case, horse racing, it's making the money, and who can blame them? It's a £1 billion industry in this country alone. We have companies who sponsor these events because they know they have a massive captive audience to get their brand out to. You know, we have some companies, some of them who you won't know, Chi London, Molson Coors, Randox Health, Pinsent Masons, among others. But they are companies who who most of us will recognise, National Express and Ryanair, and they are using this awful event to get their brand out and be connected with it. So we need to let these companies know that we're not happy with this. But then you also have all the betting companies as well, taking their pound of flesh from people who are willing to bet their money on how fast a horse, which has been forced to run, can while keeping their fingers crossed that the horse doesn't fall and lose their money. Never mind that the horse gets injured. You know, a horse falls, they just tear up their betting slip, you know, and make some cross joke about it, and then they move along. But is it a sport? You know, a sport. And I looked up the definition of sport, and it says it's an activity which involves physical exertion and skill in which an individual or team competes against another or others for entertainment. Is this entertainment? So entertainment for the horses who are racing for their lives, literally. You know, compare it with Formula One. Formula One has a highly skilled person, you know, like Lewis Hamilton, you know, the vegan hero, driving a high-spec vehicle. Then you have horse racing, which is a highly skilled person, you know, the jockey, essentially driving a horse. But the horse has to be trained, you know, and people say that horses love racing. Do they really? You know, if you give them the option to do that, would they really choose to have somebody on the back? You know, if you watch them in the field, they will love running around, they love jumping around, they love playing, socialising. Racing is not the same. I remember some time ago when I was a member of League Against the Cruel Sports, a good few years, probably about 10, 15 years ago now. And we had a conversation about, you know, we were campaigning against fox hunting. But she was actually betting on horses. And I said, these are essentially the same, you know, these are activities where horses are being exploited, and she couldn't say it, you know. She eventually did come round to my way of thinking, you know, and to say that, yes, she accepted that I was right, it is exploitation. But these animals, you know, they're not choosing to have humans on the back. They're not choosing to jump fences or run around a circus as fast as they can. There's no choice for the animal here. So if there's no choice, it's exploitation. Don't try and dress it up as sport. What happens to these animals who don't cut the mustard or who are injured, you know, whilst being trained to exceed what their normal physical capacity is and the normal strength? Do they go to good homes? Some of them might do. Riding stables, sanctuaries who are absolutely bursting at the seams and yet expected to take more animals. You know, are they shot? The trainers and the owners will take the cheapest option, you know, or try to get the most money out of these animals. Let's talk about the whip as well. You know, obviously quite controversial in the racing industry. So whips, you don't, you know, if you take a dog out for a walk on a lead, you know, you keep it safe from traffic or other dogs on the lead. That's the whole purpose, is to keep the dog safe. But you don't whip it to make it move faster or turn a corner around or to direct it in any way. It's ludicrous to say that horses enjoy racing. It's also ludicrous to say that they don't mind being whipped either. You know, the fact that you have to whip them to do something shows that, you know, you're using force and shows that it's wrong. The British Horse Racing Authority, the BHA, you know, they have, after lots of lobbying from animal groups like Animal Aid, they have a limit on how many times you can physically whip the horse. So, you know, riding in a race. So imagine that they've actually had to put a limit on how many times you can beat a horse, you can whip a horse, you know, during a race. Imagine if you were whipping a dog and there was a legal limit on, you know, I can whip my dog 4 times during a walk, but I can't, you know, if I beat it 5 times, I get censured or prosecuted. The BHA says it's just a paddle. It doesn't hurt the animal at all. But who are they kidding? What does it teach our kids? You know, it's okay to hit a horse, but it's not okay to hit the dog. And also the BHA, despite everything they say, they're not independent. They are part of the industry. They are a monitor who essentially is monitoring themselves, a bit like somebody who self-audits, okay? Now, in 2019, so the last full year, which is a non-pandemic year, there was 401 whip offences committed by 218 jockeys. 9 jockeys committed 5 or more offences. That's 401 animals being whipped beyond the limit which the BHA has agreed. Okay. Trainers love their animals, and this is another fallacy. I mean, I'm going to give you a bit of a warning now, because I am going to show a picture on the screen. I'm just going to try and make sure everything doesn't blow away, because it is quite windy here where I'm filming. But everybody will remember this picture, so I'm going to show it for a couple of seconds, and then I'm going to tell you that I've taken it down. So everybody remembers this one here. Okay, now I'm taking it down now, okay, so you can look back. This is the trainer, Richard Elliott, who was vilified in the press, quite rightly so. You know, he was quite, he came out the next few days, sort of, had, you know, his hands in his head about how sorry he was, you know, trying to explain to me what he was doing. People made excuses for him, saying he was making, he was telling people he was on the telephone, he would be 2 minutes. Other people said he was making a victory sign. But you know what it is? Neither of those matter. The fact is, he was sitting on a dead horse, a beautiful, magnificent animal who'd been alive a few minutes earlier, and probably has just been shot just for financial reasons, you know. And the fact that he thinks it's okay to sit on the body of a dead animal is so crass, it's unbelievable. So no matter what his excuses are, he was rightly vilified in the press. And now you've also got to look at, the breeding part of it as well. So we are creating animals. Now, bear in mind how many animals are in sanctuaries. You know, there's horses, there's red rings, there's loads of horse sanctuaries all over the place. But we are breeding animals, again, for a specific purpose, just to make money. Now, there's 16,000 foals which are bred in the UK alone, and 2/3 of those animals are deemed unsuitable for racing, and as many as 2,000 of them are slaughtered every single year. But also, another dark side to the industry is not many people are aware of how many horses are experimented on as part of vivisection. You know, anti-vivisection we are obviously massively against, as are Animal Aid and all other animal animal rights organisations. But specifically in Newmarket, there's an animal charity called the Animal Health Trust. Okay, so this is Animal Health Trust, but yet they're experimenting on live animals. Horses are infected deliberately. Pregnant animals have their foals aborted. Newborns are subjected to extreme stress, all to try and create this elite animal which can move faster, you know, than any other animal on earth, to make somebody some money. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. I will say, you know, don't necessarily listen to every single thing I say. Go and check the facts for yourself, because the facts are out there. Have a look at Animal Aid website. Have a look at the whistleblowers research. There's some really, really good, in-depth, peer-assessed, cross-referenced reports. There's one called Bred to Death, which is absolutely fascinating, and it's horrendous, some of the stuff you can read in there. Now let's talk about the injuries. The injuries which a lot of these animals, which they sustain, talking too fast again, but they can recover from, you know, but they're killed, they're euthanized because they're not financially viable. And the types of injuries they have are broken back, broken pelvis, broken neck, broken shoulder, smashed knee, broken cannon bone. That's a bone just below the knee, kind of sort of area. Broken pastern bones, which is just above like the ankle sort of hoof area, torn tendons, and heart attacks. Now, these are animals, who are bred for, you know, their extreme fitness and their strength and the speed. But these animals having heart attacks out on the field there, you know, on the race courses, and we think that's okay? Really? You know, horses having heart attacks, it's just horrendous. And you know what the reality is, a lot of these animals can be saved, they can be rescued, they can get well, they can recover. We have this awful situation where you have a daytime race going on, and then the green screen comes up or black screen comes up to hide the fact that they're actually killing this animal. It's so callous and grim that they have to hide it, you know. The commentator changes the subject they're talking about very quickly. But most of us know who rescue and look after animals. You know, we will try every single option available to us, regardless of the cost, because we know that we don't want that animal to suffer. And once these animals are shot, where do they end up? You know, some of them will end up as meat, pet food. Some of them will be cremated, obviously, because they have chemicals inside them with the euthanasia injection. Look at all the hypocrisy around the Tesco scandal a few years ago, when people were talking about, you know, they didn't want to eat horse meat, but they're quite happy for this thing which is dressed up as entertainment to go on in front of their eyes on TV. Now I'm going to show you another picture, and we're going to hope that this doesn't fly away. This is a really good picture from Animal Aid. Okay, and it's showing you the facts about the deadliest courses, horse races, horse deaths by race, and injuries which kill horses, which I've just read out there. There was 186 deaths in 2019. So again, the last full year, which was like pre-pandemic, so the last full year of racing. There was 145 in national hunts, and there's obviously this 41 in flat racing. Now the Grand National is a national hunt race. Okay, so obviously they're going over the massive jumps, and we know that some of these jumps themselves are quite controversial. Betcher's Brook, for example. The deadliest courses in 2019 and 2020, Southwell came up top of this league, this Grizzly League. In 2020, which was a part year, pandemic year, it was cut short. Newcastle, just up the road, came and joined third. I mean, what an awful, sort of thing to be in, sort of like third in the league of the deadliest horse race courses. And also, as of today, there is so this is 2,208 horses killed in 5,143 days. Now you can see that obviously I've handwritten this on because obviously the days sort of like march on, but the number of horses die increase as well. So that's pretty much a horse every couple of days which is dying on a race course. Now I've typed these up for this comes from the Horse Death Watch website, and you can see on here, okay, these are all the names of horses which have died year on year. Okay, these are the horses which are sort of in those numbers of 2,208. Okay, have you bet on a horse in this list? Have you sort of like just put this money on, think it's a harmless bet, and then this animal has died later on? Sort yourself out there because everything's flying around with the wind. Right, so going on to something else now. Let's address a question which is quite controversial in the vegan world. People argue that that you can be vegan, you can still be vegan, and you can horse ride. So I'm going to read out the definition of veganism for you. Okay? Veganism is a way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. So doesn't horse riding fit into that? You're going to exclude as far as possible and practicable, right? So it's not essential. It's not something which you have to have. It's not essential travel. It's not essential that you ride a horse. It's exploitation. We've already established it's exploitation because a horse has no choice. And it's any other purpose. So by definition, if you're a vegan, you should not be riding a horse. Now, a lot of vegans will have horses, and then they've obviously converted to veganism afterwards. That's fine. You're not going to suddenly get rid of your horse, but there are other ways you can manage. How your horse gets exercised. A lot of people will just walk with them, just run with them. Just let them sort of like run around in a field. The horse is absolutely fine. It's safe. This is what sanctuaries do. Sanctuaries look after the animals. They don't go riding the horses in the sanctuaries. It's ridiculous. Okay. I also want to talk a little bit briefly about greyhound racing, because greyhound racing is a very sad, has some very sad stories to it as well. It's seen as more of a working class pastime, but there is some big money still to be made in it. Caged Nationwide, they run a campaign called Ban the Bolt, but it's also their aim to close down stadiums, and they have been quite successful in that aim as well. Ban the Bolt campaign is to raise awareness of how the greyhounds, which the people are betting their money on, their hard-earned cash on, are being killed. It's basically a bolt gun which has a bolt in it. You put it to the animal's head and you shoot it, and then the bolt goes straight into the animal's head, and in theory kills it outright. Sometimes it doesn't kill it outright. Okay, now 7,000 animals under the age of 5 are killed. And anyone owning a dog can kill the dog in this way. So if you are technically the legal owner, you can kill your dog by a bolt gun, okay? But you can actually arrange for somebody else in the industry to pay as little as £10 to kill your dog for you. And these are not dogs who are necessarily injured. Some of them are, and obviously not financially viable anymore. But some of them they're not running fast enough, so they can't make the owners the money. So basically they have no use to them, so they'll just get rid of them. Okay. Now, this is where you can come in. This is where you can help. So you can contact the agencies, the authorities like the British Horse Racing Authority. Tell them what you think of them. Tell them, politely that you think this is exploitation and this needs to be confined to the dark ages. Contact the race courses, especially the ones who are on the hit list. The ones who are in the leagues. It's been the ones who have the highest numbers of casualties. Watch out for petitions. Contact your MPs, contact the TV channels who air these programs. Like ITV and Channel 4 have big racing programs. Contact them and tell them that you're not happy that they do this. Contact the companies who sponsor them as well. I've used a lot of information today from Animal Aid, from Horse Death Watch, which is part of Animal Aid as well, but it's specifically about the horse racing industry, and Caged Nationwide. So to finish off, what I would say is, when you are asked to take part in a work sweep, if somebody says it's just a bit of fun, it's just a bit of a flutter, it isn't. Put it simply, you bet on these animals and they can die. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. I'm going to sign off now, and hopefully I will see some of you very soon in Newcastle. This is Anna Amelia from North East Animal Rights saying thank you very much for listening and goodbye for now.